Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Dharma Helper, and this is DH Reviews. And I've been waiting a very long time to say this. Welcome back to my Constantine reviews. This is my Season 1, Episode 9 review of Constantine. If you missed any of my previous Constantine reviews, I'll leave a link in the description of this video, as well as an annotation behind me on the screen. You can check either of those out, and that'll take you right to the playlist that has all of my Constantine videos in it. Also, I'll go ahead and link all my other reviews as well. If you haven't seen my Agent Carter review yet, go ahead and check that out. And we're getting back into Scorpion and Gotham and all that stuff, so I'll leave all that in the description of the video as well. With that being said, let's get down to Constantine. Season 1, Episode 9 was called The Saint of Last Resorts Part 2. And this episode very literally takes place right after the end of the last episode, with Constantine bleeding out in the sewers and that whole thing going on. And to save himself, Constantine allows himself to be possessed by the Demon King Pazuzu. And this episode is basically him racing against the clock, his team racing against the clock, trying to excise the Demon King Pazuzu out of him before the demon can take complete control. And we get a little bit more information very casually and carefully about the rising darkness and the army that the Brujeria is starting to create, and how far they will go and their influence so far on Earth in this episode, with the whole thing about the Serpent of Eden. And we get a little bit more information about some of the characters like Chaz, and a little bit more information about Anne-Marie. And it's an interesting episode in that it's not so much a Constantine episode as it is, an Anne-Marie episode, mixed in with a little bit of Chaz, mixed in with a little bit of Zed. So not really, the focus here is not on Constantine, which was interesting, and we'll talk about that. But right now, let's talk about the characters that we saw in this episode and what happened with them in the episode. And let's start off with my argument for the main character of the episode, and probably the main character of the last two episodes, Anne-Marie. In this episode, Anne struggles very much with her faith and with her decisions. She fights with her decision to have to sacrifice Constantine in the last episode, and she goes back to that habit of never mind. That was a corny joke. She goes back into the habit of running and hiding behind her faith, and she wrestles with the idea of, I shot Constantine, I sacrificed him because he would have sacrificed the child and all this stuff. And initially, she's not willing to help Zed and Chaz save Constantine. And she gets turned around, and they find him via her biolocation, which we talked about in the comments section, we talked about on Twitter and stuff like that, is one of her abilities, and probably her chief ability and her most powerful ability, is her ability to be in two places at once. And she uses that a couple times in the episode. And, she's struggling not only with her decision with Constantine in that regard, but also her guilt of introducing Constantine to the occult, and her creating Constantine is very much a huge factor in her decisions in this episode. Basically, we talked about this in my last review, and we talked about it in the comments and on Twitter, all that stuff. Constantine, to me, is her Frankenstein's monster. She introduced him to all this occult stuff, and from there he grew into the powerful dabbler of the dark arts and all this stuff. And so she's responsible for him in that regard. And another thing she wrestles with in this episode is the parallels between the exorcism for John and the exorcism that took place in Newcastle, and their failure in Newcastle. I think those are those are probably the chief things that are weighing on her mind in this episode, and that affect her faith during the exorcism of John. Because they take John back to the cabin to try and excise the demon, and it requires a lot of faith and conviction and voice of purpose or voice of conviction that they talk about when they're casting spells. It takes a lot of that, and the demon preys on Anne-Marie's insecurities and Zed's insecurities and Chaz's insecurities. And so initially, they have a little bit of a problem trying to do that. But through, Zed talking to her and Constantine talking to her, and Anne-Marie is able to, put enough faith together and really have confidence in herself and conviction in herself to excise this demon and to save John's life. And so I thought, that was a really satisfying arc, a 2-episode arc for this character, to have her start off as this, timid or afraid or cowardly, sort of hiding behind the nunnery and all this stuff. And then we get an idea of why she did that and, her reasons for that. And really fleshed out this character and brought it to a satisfying conclusion in that she was able to overcome all of these demons in her past and these spirits that were haunting her in her past. Her creation of John, her failure at Newcastle, all this stuff that we got tastes of and tidbits of in the story that culminated ultimately in her deciding to save John's life and excise this demon. And I want to see more from Anne-Marie in future episodes, because I think that character, now that we've seen that character almost from start to finish, I'm very invested in that character, and I want to see more of that character and what she's able to do now that she's moved on past all of that Newcastle stuff. And I think she's really the first member of Newcastle, of the Newcastle group, to successfully move on. John hasn't moved on. I don't think he'll ever move on, really. Chaz, I don't think, has moved on. Gary didn't get the opportunity to move on and redeem himself. Well, he kind of got the opportunity to move on and redeem himself, but he died in the process. And we haven't seen anything from that other Newcastle group member, Julia, or whatever her name was. So to see that and to have such a character in a unique position like that, I think is going to be really important for them to use in later episodes and maybe in later seasons. So that's Anne-Marie for the episode. Let's talk now about Zed. And as I said, Zed was the driving force behind getting Anne-Marie to get her head on straight and to get her facts on straight and to, build up the courage that she needed to excise this demon. She says, I saw a vision of you hiding and being afraid, and you have to break free of the prison that you made for yourself, or whatever pep talk she gave. And so that was, a key contributing factor into the success of the team and to succeeding in excising the demon. And that was something that I was proud to see out of Zed, and that she's taken the reins here in the absence of John and, in the absence of any real leadership or experience. Zed was able to take the reins and keep everybody in line. One thing I did want to bring up about Zed was her loyalty to John, which she and Anne-Marie have a conversation about. Anne-Marie says that he's basically going to have you die for him at one point. At some point, you're going to have that decision in front of you where he's going to, make you want to die for him, or whatever she said. And that Zed has stayed so loyal to John despite not only John's behavior, but the advice that she's been getting from Anne-Marie and the experience that she saw with Gary and all this sort of stuff that's being thrown at her. I think that's dangerous, but I think that's also in a way admirable, that she's able to stay loyal to John in the face of all this. And she, again, I keep saying it, she's seen the beginnings of what Anne-Marie and what Gary and what Chaz and what Manny have experienced. She's in that honeymoon phase of magic and demonology and all this mystical adventure. And John Constantine is this sassy sort of charming rogue sort of character, and eventually the honeymoon phase is going to end, and is going to experience what Anne-Marie experienced, what Gary experienced, and it's not going to end well for her, I don't think. I did want to talk about, because in this episode we did get a little bit more information about the Crusade and a little bit more information about Zed's position there and what her thought process is. She escapes the Crusade in this episode, obviously, because in the last episode she was captured. She escapes, and she wrestles with trying to decide when's the right time to tell John about the Crusade. And so I want to see her tell John about the Crusade. I don't think she did in this episode, but again, I'm recording this review on a Monday, and I saw the episode on a Friday, so I can't remember if she told him or not. I don't believe she did, and I want to see what his reaction to that will be, what perhaps alliances can be forged between the Brujeria, this Crusade, John's sort of camp, or if they're all going to be kind of working against each other in a sort of triangle of violence. I think that's all I wanted to talk about Zed for this episode. So let's talk very briefly about Chaz a little bit. Chaz is another person who's remained extremely loyal to John for a very long time. And during that scene when John is possessed by Pazuzu and he's, spitting all this stuff out about Anne-Marie's past, about Zed, about Chaz's past, he talks very much about, all this loss and family and everything that Chaz has gone through as a result of being with John and all this stuff. And it looks like we're going to get a little bit more of that in the next episode. And I'm going to be interested to see the fallout from that and how far Chaz will go to protect John and keep John safe, and how far that loyalty extends. It seems like that loyalty extends very far, given what we've seen in this episode and in previous episodes. But why is that? And what sort of brought that on? And who is Chaz? And what is he about? I think we'll get more of that in the next episode. Wrapping up my characters discussion here, I want to talk very briefly about Manny. And Manny in this episode is very much, I want to say angry at John, but I don't know if an angel can feel emotions like that. Oh, but if they can, we definitely saw that Chaz is angry at John. He's spiteful. He doesn't help. He doesn't offer any kind of assistance. Not only that, but he throws that in John's face, basically saying, I could help you, but I don't want to, and I'm not going to. And you decided to put that demon in you and all this stuff, and so you made your bed, John, lay in it. And that's a different Manny than we've seen before, and I think that's partly because of the fact that John decided to allow Pazuzu in, and partly as part of the fact that John kind of forced Manny's hand in the episode with Imogen and all that stuff when Manny intervened and saved Zed's life, and we haven't quite seen the consequences of that quite yet. So that's kind of characters in this episode. I mean, I could talk about John, but nothing really came up that I haven't already brought up, and as I said, this episode wasn't really a John Constantine episode. So that's really all I wanted to talk about in terms of characters. Overall, really solid return for the series. I enjoyed it immensely. I think we got a lot of very good character development with Anne-Marie. I think we learned a lot about the Crusade. Very subtly, they were able to sprinkle in information about the Crusade, about Chaz, and about the Brujeria. Again, I enjoyed the concept of the Snake of Eden, sort of the Serpent of Eden, being a servant of the Brujeria, and being a man in a suit. And so obviously there are agents of the Brujeria that we haven't seen yet, that we will see in the future, that are on Earth already, kind of causing hell and chaos and all this stuff. So from a story standpoint, it's a really strong episode. And I look forward very much to where they take things from here. with all that being said, there's really no criticisms I can think of the episode, which is good in a way, bad in a way, in that I really wish there was something I could nitpick about, but this was a really strong episode. And with that all being said, guys, I won't be doing my normal sort of sign-off. You guys already know. Like this video if you're going to like it. Subscribe if you're going to subscribe. All that kind of stuff. We'll talk in the comments. We'll talk in Twitter. All this sort of stuff. What I will do, and what I think is the most important thing for me to do at this point, is to say that if you enjoyed the show, show your support on Twitter. Show your support on Facebook. Show your support on Tumblr if you enjoyed the show, because I enjoy the show and I do my part. I'm on Twitter talking to people, and the show's in a little bit of a precarious position. They changed the time slot from 9 to 8, so make sure you tell everybody, all your friends and family and stuff that watch the show. Make sure you make sure you understand that the show has changed from 9 to 8, and make sure you show your support and watch the show, so that we can get a second season and they can continue to tell these stories that are really interesting. And I can continue to talk about these stories that are really interesting, because I enjoy talking about Constantine with you guys, not only here in the videos, but on Twitter and the comments section, all kinds of stuff. It's really the highlight of my experience reviewing these shows, is to talk about these shows with you guys. So with that being said, save Constantine on Twitter, hashtag save Constantine. Get out there and show your support and show NBC, because NBC has a track record of not really giving shows the benefit of the doubt. I did talk about this on Twitter very briefly. I had a tweet or whatever. We had a conversation about Dracula, which was a show very much like Constantine, that only got one season, and NBC really didn't pick it up, and it was a really good show. It was one of my favorite shows. I'd say one of my favorite shows of all time. And I would hate to see Constantine go the way of a lot of these shows that NBC seems to think people aren't going to watch, or whatever the case may be, and they just cancel them outright. So with that all being said, throw your support behind Constantine. Remember that it's from now it airs at 8 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock. And thanks for watching this video. I've been Dharma Helper. This has been DH Reviews. And now more than ever, it's important that you stay tuned.